So, Alanis Morissette. When you hear that name, what's the first thing, that pops into your head? For a lot of us, I think it's just immediate, like, sounds, images, definitely a very 90s vibe, right? And probably one specific album, Jagged Little Pill. That's the big one, the touchstone that just seemed to, well, explode. But, while that angry white female label kind of stuck early on, this deep dive, we really want to show you a much more complex artist, nuanced, enduring. We're going to unpack her whole journey, from Canadian pop prodigy, which might surprise some people, to this global rock icon, and really dig into how she just shattered expectations, how she used her voice, not just singing, but, for change, and how she keeps evolving personally, professionally, right up to now. And to do that, we've looked at, a lot of stuff. Career retrospective, sure, but also fan discussions, some really interesting academic takes on her music, and lots of interviews she's done. Our mission here is basically to pull out the key insights, the most important bits, and give you a shortcut to understanding the surprising facts, the real impact of Alanis Morissette.
We'll explore her influence on music and culture, but also social movements, and how she consistently used that voice, literally and figuratively, to challenge things. So let's dive in. It's almost funny to think about now, but before Jagged Little Pill just took over the world, Alanis Morissette had this completely different thing going on. Back in Canada, early 90s, she was actually a dance pop artist. Seriously. 2 albums, Alanis in 91, Now's the Time in 92. People apparently called her the Debbie Gibson of Canada. And, get this, she opened for Vanilla Ice.
Yeah, it's kind of wild to think about now.
Right. Such a contrast.
And that's such a crucial point. It really highlights the sheer scale of that transformation, because after those early dance pop years, she made a very deliberate move, relocating to Los Angeles. And that's when it all started to change. It was a conscious reinvention, really shedding that pop image for something much, much rawer, alternative rock. And that culminated in Jagged Little Pill in 1995, a total musical metamorphosis. Not many artists pull that off so well successfully.
Metamorphosis is the word. And the success, Jagged Little Pill wasn't just big, it was colossal. Over 33 million copies sold worldwide. That makes it one of the best-selling albums ever. I remember it was just everywhere. You couldn't escape it. But okay, it sold millions, right? But what about the critical side? Was that success, expected? Especially for something so raw, so exposed.
That's a really great question, and it gets right to the core of its impact. The critical reception was fascinating because while it got praise, a lot of critics at first didn't quite know what to do with it. It kind of defied labels, too angsty maybe for some rock purists, way too raw for mainstream pop. But still, the recognition was immense. 5 Grammys in 96. 5!
Including Album of the Year, right? She was super young.
Exactly. Yeah. Youngest ever winner of Album of the Year at that point. Plus, Best Female Rock Vocal, Best Rock Song for You Ought to Know, Best Rock Album. And it wasn't just Grammys. MTV VMA for Best New Artist, MTV Europe Music Award for Best Female. Billboard had it as the #1 album of 96, #1 for the whole decade, the 90s, and #7 album of all time. So this wasn't just selling records, it was signaling a huge shift. What was seen as culturally important, artistically valuable. It basically proved that vulnerability, that raw feeling, could be a massive force in music. Commercially viable, too.
Which leads right into the next point, because this wasn't just sales and awards. It felt like a cultural earthquake. People often say it opened doors for female singers, right?
Right.
Paved the way for a whole new wave. How exactly did that happen? What changed?
That's absolutely key. Before Alanis, women in mainstream rock and pop were often pushed into, let's say, specific boxes.
Yeah.
You had the powerful balladeers, the polished pop stars, maybe some punk acts, but they were often on the fringes. Alanis comes along with this just raw, unapologetic anger, these incredibly confessional lyrics. She didn't fit any of those molds. And her massive success, critically and commercially, basically screamed to the industry that there was a huge audience for women expressing complex, sometimes messy, uncomfortable emotions without a filter.
So she proved the market was there.
Exactly. And that directly made it easier for artists who came after, like you mentioned, Meredith Brooks.
Oh, yeah, Tracy Bonham, too,
Yeah.
right?
Precisely. Tracy Bonham, Patti Rothberg, and later, Avril Lavigne, Pink. Alanis showed there was an appetite for these authentic, often rebellious female voices. She fundamentally expanded the definition of what a female artist could be and sing about.
And talking about gritty truths.
Yeah.
Who could forget You Ought to Know? And the whole Dave Coulier thing, that became pure pop culture legend.
It really did. The song itself, that raw anger, the betrayal, it felt so real because it tapped into something universal, but the lyrics were so specific. And then the celebrity speculation just threw fuel on the fire, made it a massive talking point. It was so potent that even Coulier himself eventually said something like, "The guy in that song is a real a-hole."
Which everyone took as basically confirmation.
Pretty much, it cemented the song's place in pop history.
Yeah.
Showed how art could take personal pain and make it resonate everywhere.
It's also funny how her music sparked debates that went beyond the music itself, even into, like, grammar. The song Ironic. For decades, people have argued whether the things she lists, rain on your wedding day, 10,000 spoons.
When all you need is a knife.
He's great. It's technically ironic. There's literally a Wikipedia section called Linguistic Usage Disputes. Why has that debate lasted so long?
It's kind of fascinating, isn't it? I think it's partly because the song was just so huge, everyone knew the lyrics, and partly because, well, it hit a nerve with people's understanding of that word irony. She used it maybe more colloquially, more observationally, and that sparked this sometimes slightly pedantic but definitely lively discussion. The fact that we're still talking about it shows how deeply people engaged with her words, pulled them apart. It became part of the cultural conversation.
That's a great point. It made people think. But okay, let's dig a bit deeper now, because sometimes we focus so much on the lyrics, the stories, maybe the gossip, we kind of miss the incredible power just in her voice. That angry white female tag suggests something maybe one-dimensional, but the reality, especially when you look at academic analysis, is way more complex.
Oh, absolutely. That label is incredibly reductive. What's really compelling is how versatile and, frankly, idiosyncratic her voice is. It goes way beyond just anger. Researchers have actually identified what they call a primary palette of 6 distinct vocal styles she uses just on Jagged Little Pill.
6 styles, okay, like what?
Yeah, things like speech song, almost like rhythmic talking, her natural modal voice, then the really powerful belt. But also a very delicate soft voice, a melodic sweet voice, and even that raw kind of piercing squeal she uses sometimes. Each one has its own sound, its own feeling. And this range, this uninhibited, minimally processed quality, it really sold the authenticity of that album persona to listeners.
That's such a great breakdown. Can you give an example of how she uses these styles, not just for emotion, but maybe to, like, structure a song?
Definitely. A perfect example is, well, the song Perfect. In that track, she shifts between these vocal styles really strategically. It's not just about expressing emotion second by second. It actually creates, as the analysis puts it, structural relationships affecting our perception of a song's form. So she might use a softer, almost childlike voice to show the effects of, say, intense parental pressure, but then shift to a forceful belt to reveal the kind of toxic stuff hidden beneath supposedly gentle words.
Wow. So the voice itself tells the story, shapes how you understand it.
Exactly. It functions structurally, almost like the harmony or melody does. It's really masterful vocal storytelling.
And that idea of using her voice extends beyond just the music, doesn't it? She's been a consistent advocate, speaking truth publicly. Her support for equality now, for example. They've said her help has been meaningful in its impact and tangible in its results, helping women and girls find their voices. What makes her advocacy there so effective?
I think it's effective because it feels so deeply authentic, so rooted in her own experiences and the themes in her music. It's not just a celebrity endorsement. She really throws her weight behind the message of empowering women, ending violence against women and girls. And this became incredibly clear in that 2021 documentary, Jagged.
Right, where she shared her own experience.
Yes, she spoke her own truth, sharing multiple instances of childhood sexual assault, stuff she said took decades to process. By being that brave, that vulnerable, she uses her platform to keep this vital conversation about sexual violence going, but always centering survivors' voices. That direct link makes her advocacy incredibly powerful and, frankly, inspiring. It helps others feel less alone, maybe more able to speak out themselves.
And you can draw a direct line from her music to that advocacy. Like you said, she taught so many people that not holding others accountable just lets the status quo continue. That's about personal responsibility, collective responsibility. And that same sort of fierce commitment to truth showed up in her public actions too, especially around censorship. That 2004 Juno Awards moment was something else.
Oh, yeah, truly iconic and perfectly timed. It was right after the Janet Jackson Super Bowl incident in the U.S., which sparked this huge wave of media self-censorship. Everything got very sensitive. So Alanis uses the Junos, Canada's big music awards, to make a statement. Comes out in a bathrobe.
And then whips it off.
Exactly. Reveals this flesh-colored bodysuit underneath. It was such a clear visual protest against that moral panic, that censorship climate, asserting artistic freedom. And she didn't stop there. She openly called out American radio for censoring a word asshole in her song Everything, while praising Canadian radio for playing it uncensored.
Always consistent.
Absolutely. A consistent refusal to be silenced or sanitized.
Okay, shifting gears a bit now. Her journey isn't just about music and advocacy. Her personal life, especially family, seems central to her evolution too. She married Mario Solai Treadway, the rapper, back in 2010. They have 3 kids now, Ever, Onyx, and Winter.
Yes, and what's really interesting is how she talks about this relationship compared to previous ones, some quite high-profile ones we mentioned earlier, like Dave Coulier or Ryan Reynolds. She described hitting a kind of brick wall with past partners, like there was a limit to the growth or intimacy. But with Solai, she felt this limitlessness, as she put it, because their core values aligned partnership, family, seeing the relationship itself as a hotbed for growth and healing.
That sounds like a really profound shift in perspective.
It really does. It suggests finding a partner who matched where she was personally and spiritually.
And she brings that intentionality to parenting too.
Yeah.
Some really unique philosophies like unschooling for her daughter Onyx. What does that actually involve? And then attachment parenting for her son Winter.
Yeah, she's very thoughtful about it. Unschooling for Onyx is basically child-led learning. Instead of a set curriculum, learning follows the child's interests. Alanis gave the example. If Onyx wants to put glitter on that thing, they do a deep dive into glitter, its history, science, whatever. It's about sparking that natural curiosity.
Following the passion.
Exactly. And then for Winter, attachment parenting focuses on building a really strong emotional bond. That means lots of eye contact, skin on skin, being super responsive to needs, gentleness, and what she calls attunement, really tuning into the child's emotional state, their nonverbal cues.
Wow. Both sound incredibly involved.
They are. Both approaches really reflect her commitment to fostering individual growth within secure, connected relationships.
It's interesting, too, how open she's been about her own struggles. That vulnerability is quite striking. She said she has an anxious, depressive tendency and flat out said she would not be alive without therapy. Even admits she still deals with depressive thoughts all the time. Why is that openness so important, do you think?
It's hugely important, especially coming from someone with her level of fame. We often expect celebrities to project perfection, right?
Yeah.
So for her to be so honest about having an anxious, depressive tendency, about needing therapy to survive, it just normalizes it for everyone. It tells millions of people it's okay to struggle. And seeking help is actually strength, not weakness.
Reduces that stigma.
Absolutely. It connects with her audience on such a deep level, especially those who grew up feeling her music understood them. It's another form of speaking truth.
And her take on addiction is also really insightful. She includes work addiction, calling it equally corrosive as other forms, saying any addiction, if we keep going with it, we're dead.
That really hits hard, especially when society often praises being a workaholic.
That's a really powerful point she makes, because our culture does often glorify constant work, nonstop productivity. By putting work addiction on par with other addictions, she challenges that norm. She highlights how any compulsive behavior, even one that looks productive on the surface, can be damaging if it's an escape, if it stops you from connecting or caring for yourself. It fits into her wider view of holistic well-being, self-awareness. And tying that into the bigger picture, her overall philosophy is pretty compelling. This idea that God is in us, seeing relativity instead of just bad, viewing tragedy as a consequence of our forgetting who we are, but believing something can be done about everything we perceive as bad, if we choose. How does that spirituality shape her life and art?
I think it's deeply woven into everything. Believing God is in us implies this inherent worth and potential in everyone, which you see reflected in her messages of empowerment. Seeing relativity instead of bad isn't about denying pain, but maybe understanding things in a bigger context, moving beyond simple judgment. And that idea that tragedy comes from forgetting who we are, but that we can do something about bad things. That speaks to agency, to hope.
A call to action, almost.
Yeah, a call to self-awareness and conscious choice, believing we can influence our reality. It feels like the foundation for her resilience, her constant evolution, her whole message of truth and healing.
And she definitely kept evolving artistically after Jagged Little Pill. That wasn't the end of the story by any means. What came next, musically and professionally?
Right, she absolutely refused to be typecast or just repeat the formula. The follow-up album, Supposed Former Infatuation Junkie in '98, That was a bold move. Way more experimental, sprawling, longer songs, more complex arrangements, less obviously commercial than JLP.
It divided people a bit, didn't it?
It did. Some critics were confused, but it really showed her artistic ambition, her refusal to play it safe. Then she revisited her big hit with Jagged Little Pill acoustic in 2005, giving those songs a totally different feel, more intimate, reflective, let you hear the lyrics fresh. And then, yeah, the acting. Playing God in Kevin Smith's Dogma was just brilliant casting.
Kind of meta, right?
Totally. It played with her image, her spiritual themes, but in a really quirky way. And she did recurring TV roles too, like in Weeds in the Great North. Showed her range went beyond music.
And she's still creating a meditation album in 2022, teasing new music for 2024. That constant creativity, it also seems to apply to how she deals with the industry now.
Absolutely. The continued output shows this deep drive. And yes, her relationship with the music business has definitely changed. She now pushes for what she calls a win-win, 50-50 partnership with labels. She's even called past arrangements an abusive relationship. So this shift is about demanding respect, creative freedom, fair control over her own work.
Treating artists as partners, not products.
Exactly. It's a mature, empowered approach to the business side.
And if you're wondering what it's like to actually go see her live these days, fan accounts paint a really cool picture. They say the crowds are chill and accepting, a good vibe with nice people, and it's all ages. Lots of younger fans brought by their parents. What does that tell you about her legacy?
It's just a fantastic testament to her lasting impact, isn't it? Those descriptions, chill, accepting, good vibe, all ages, show her music has genuinely crossed generations. It's not just 90s nostalgia. New generations are connecting with that honesty, those themes. Often introduced by their parents, it proves the timelessness of what she talks about. It shows the community around her. Music is built on something real, shared emotion, authenticity, belonging, not just trends. Her concerts sound like proof that speaking truth builds lasting connections.
So, wrapping up this deep dive, it's really clear Alanis Morissette's journey is incredible. From Canadian dance pop to a global rock icon, and this enduring, powerful advocate. The story of constantly finding, sharpening, and just fearlessly using her voice, musically, personally, culturally, always challenging things.
Yeah, her story is such a powerful example of how one person's authentic voice can spark massive cultural change and resonate so personally with so many people. It really does prove that speaking your truth, even when it's raw, uncomfortable, maybe goes against the grain, it can be this incredible force for change and for healing.
And yet, despite all this success, all this undeniable impact, Alanis herself calls fame a false sense of power. She says it's very fleeting, very illusory. Coming from someone who's seen fame at its absolute peak, that really makes you think. So here's a final thought for you to ponder. If real impact, lasting legacy, isn't truly found in the spotlight according to her, what does her journey teach us about where we should look for our own lasting contributions? Especially when her music has so clearly, so tangibly affected so many people on such a deep level.